Hi, Dee.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm great, Lolly. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you. I wanted to just tell folks that we're going to be um, asking questions through the chat feature in the Zoom. So please feel free to ask questions. Stay muted for the most part. There may be an opportunity to have people play or do some actual interactive stuff, but for the most part, you're going to be playing on your own in and uh, listening to Dee and asking your questions through chat, and we'll pick them up towards the end of the workshop, or if there's something we really need to address, we'll just get it right in while we're working. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lolly Lewis. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of Amateur Music Network. I'm just so glad to have you all here for a really special afternoon with someone who I just can't think of who can inspire us more than Dee Spencer to love music and play and have music in our lives. So we're really lucky to have Dee here today, and I don't want to waste any time. Let's get right to it and ask Dee to tell us just a little bit about how she got where she is, in her path as a musician, and let her guide us through a journey in blues and improvisation. Thanks, Dee.
Wow, thanks so much for having me. I want to thank the Amateur Musicians Network and Lolly for having me. And this is a great opportunity for me to actually get a chance to say hi and do my thing. I'm Dee Spencer, and I wear many hats, as many artists do. I my compose and arrange. I direct musicals, all kinds of things like that. And it's such a great opportunity for me to to be with everybody today, and hope everybody's keeping cool and and doing okay. I know that so many of you have done so many things with music, and it's great that you're engaging in music right now. Um, and I just want to say that my background as a kid, when I was growing up, I played piano as a kid. I took classical lessons, and I was in the band as a kid. I was a woodwind major, actually. I was an oboe major in high school and college. So I had a lot of experience playing in ensembles. And today we're going to look at two compositions that I've written recently. One is a boogie woogie. And I just want to say that both of these compositions are written down, notated, and both of them are dances. They're dances. So if you're a dancer out there and you've got some sense of groove and time, that's what's really most important for this kind of opportunity is groove and time. Groove and time for, playing jazz and playing the blues. So the first thing I want to emphasize is the importance of the fact that this is a very inclusive kind of a music, and it's for everybody. Everybody can get something from it. Everybody can participate in it. Everybody can play this music. It's everybody's music. And no matter what level or what skill set you have, you're coming into it from as a self-taught player, or you've had classical training, or you can always just get something from playing this kind of music. So a little bit about the boogie woogie. It was a dance form from the late 1920s and 1930s. And some very famous people, Albert Ammons played boogie woogie, Me Lux Lewis. There's a whole history of playing this whole dance called the boogie woogie. And it was used to entertain. People danced to the piano back in the late 20s, 1920s, and early 1930s. So the piano player was actually the person in charge of keeping the dance floor moving and keeping people dancing. So this whole thing of the boogie woogie was basically a thing that people listened to dance. So because of that, you need a strong sense of time and rhythm and beat anybody could do that. Anybody could like just play F on the lower hand and a C, F and a C in your left hand. You could just like, that's the essence of it. That's the whole essence of the boogie woogie right there. So I've taken the time to write it all out, notate it, because I feel like some people gravitate towards, the printed page, and that's great. You can see what's there for this particular beauty box boogie. But you can also get into it based on, listening, because listening is a really, really important part. Another thing about the boogie woogie is that it's played very freely, and you can improvise on it. You can, what I call personalize. You can personalize this music, make it your own. Even though I've written it all out, even though you've got something there, you can always feel free to add something, add your own little spice to the music, add your own little, sense of, you know, identification. You can put your ID, your stamp on anything that you play in jazz. Um, I gravitated towards jazz as a teenager because my uncles were into it. When I was growing up, I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and my uncles listened to jazz, and so I was like, God, this music is kind of fun, and I was playing classical and doing my hand exercises, going, oh my gosh, I'm working really hard here. And I found that jazz let me express myself. So there was a player by the name of Dorothy Dunnigan, whom I had the chance of hearing, and was an African American jazz pianist from New York City, and she could really play the boogie woogie, and I was just wow, that was it. I had to figure out how to play this, and interestingly enough, I don't get a lot of opportunity. Whenever I do, I really like jump on that opportunity, jump on that chance. It's based primarily on the blues. So if you like the blues, you like boogie woogie. Boogie woogie and the blues are hand in hand. And most of the boogie woogie players are very, very deeply entrenched in the blues. It's got the same form as the blues form, 12 bar blues is based on. And what I did with this particular composition was I sort of like mixed it up and added some modern elements to it. So I didn't stick straight to the traditional boogie woogie form. I was like, I want to put my little stamp on this beauty box boogie and make it a little modern, have a little modern section. So if you're at a piano, feel like playing along, come on and play along with me. If not, feel the groove. The sheet music is available. I think we might have gotten a chance to get a copy of the sheet music, and we'll just start playing it. It starts off with this intro, and then the right hand comes in. Then we get right into it. So tempo is something that can be negotiated. You don't have to do it at what did I write here? Quarter note equal to 135. You don't have to do it at 135. You can do it at 130, 145, whatever you feel. Whatever you feel. There's a lot of room for personalization and interpretation. And when you practice the boogie woogie, you can use a metronome if you want, but I recommend a program called iReal Pro. Now, iReal Pro is an app you can get. I think it's like maybe 15 bucks or something, but it's worth the investment because what it does is it makes practicing so much fun. It's more engaging and more fun. It also helps you understand the feel of the music because as opposed to just having a stagnant pulse, this app, iReal Pro, allows you to have different feels, different grooves. So I've chosen a groove for this particular called the Blues Chicago Shuffle. And it's just a drummer, it's a drum track. But there it is. Now Now you gotta say,
It's not really. It's just picking up intermittently.
You need to hold it
oh,
back. Hold it back a little bit.
hold it back.
Yeah,
Is that better?
a little better. Actually, you could probably put it up on the music stand now.
So that's a lot more fun to practice with. I'll show you. Yeah. So I would suggest having fun with it and practicing with this app rather than because it also helps you get the groove of the whole song. So you're doing two things. You're getting the tempo, of course, because it's a metronome, but you're also establishing the groove and the feel. And that's also really important as well. So when you play this boogie woogie, yeah, have a good time with it. Have a really, really good time with it. Has anybody had a chance to check it out or look at it? But the boogie woogie, it's so interesting. As it evolved, it kind of went really out of fashion, and people who played stride piano and the classics sort of became the forefront of jazz piano. So the whole boogie woogie era was rather short and short lived, unfortunately. I still like to think of it as being an important kind of a thing. Um, and what happened was Benny Goodman and a lot of the big band artists included boogie woogie compositions written by people like Mary Lou Williams. They included boogie woogie into their repertoire during the swing era. So there was a lot of, popularization of the whole boogie woogie movement during that particular time before it kind of faded out and was replaced by other more elegant forms like stride. People tended to think that the stride form was much more of an elegant kind of thing, and it also uh, the stride emphasized the music of the Broadway shows and Gershwin, Cole Porter, and that kind of thing. So you had a broader audience for the stride pieces, and stride, of course, is that movement where your left hand is striding back and forth on the keys elegantly. So yeah, the left hand again is an important part of playing jazz, really important, your left hand. Your right hand tends to be your improvisational tool, and your left hand tends to hold everything down in terms of the harmonies, the chords, and then the time. So yeah, the two work together. So that's Beauty Box Boogie. I'll play a little bit more of it for you. It didn't go, it goes into a like, I'll play the whole A section for you, and you'll hear how the modern jazz component comes into it. I'll just play that for you. Here's the modern jazz. So it always comes back to that lick. That's sort of the swing aspect of it, the big band aspect of it. So for now, if you're at your piano or wherever you are, let's just play the intro. Yeah. This first chord, even though it's written out as a D flat 13, going to a C9. Just stay right there. Yeah, and that will help you establish the groove. There are so many different left-hand piano grooves. That's another thing I wanted to tell you. This one, that's the one that people typically associate with boogie woogie. But this one is also, the one I used is also one that's associated. All right. Do you want to do a little bit of the A section? Let's do, come on, we can do this. We can do this. The A section is where, and I'll slow it down. So if you want to just play the left hand part, just play the left. I also suggest that you practice hands separately. That's always a good thing to do. Just to make sure you get some left hand independence, right? So we'll slow it down. We go right at the repeat sign. I guess it's measure 15. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Yeah. Now it goes into double time. Don't worry about it if you can't do that. Then it goes back into the boogie, boogie woogie. The next chorus is called the shout chorus. So that comes back again. So yeah, you have different. It's called the shout
again, Dee? Because shuffle, did you say?
The shout
chorus.
Shout. Yeah.
Thanks. Your audio just crapped out for a second.
Oh, sorry. The shout chorus. Yeah, the shout chorus is the section where the band really gets really loud and then it comes back down. So the shout chorus is where people just, it comes from the tradition, the African American tradition, where everybody just got so excited, you just got up and started shouting. So it's like the big climactic moment of the piece. the shout chorus. Any other questions about Beauty Box before we go on? Because I wrote 2 compositions. Should I move to the second one? I'll go to the second one. And we can always come back. We can always come back if you don't have any questions, any burning questions. The next piece I wrote, Quarantine Cakewalk. Now,
everybody's got these to download, right?
Yeah, it would be great if you had them. Now, the cakewalk is another dance during antebellum times and also during the early 1900s, the cakewalk. So what happened was there'd be these dance contests, and the winner of the dance contest was awarded a cake. Woo! Later on, they developed cash prizes, just so you know. But people were given a cake, and people would come from miles around. People had reputations for winning the cakewalk dance or winning the cakewalk competition. And later, this whole tradition evolved, as you know, in a dance contest. If you ever watched that show called Soul Train, they had a Soul Train line, and people would dance down it, and they would win or something. I don't know what they do. But it's a whole tradition, the cakewalk. So what I did was I fashioned this particular composition, completely notated, after a traditional ragtime piece. Now, ragtime, as you know, developed in the 1900s, and the whole concept of ragged time was about syncopation. And we all know about the great ragtime composers like Scott Joplin, for example, who wrote The Entertainer, remember the movie, and the Maple Leaf Rag. All of the ragtime compositions are notated and notational. So you can buy a whole book of Scott Joplin's complete rags. Um, so this particular piece was fashioned after John Philip Sousa's marches. So the whole formal structure is the same as a John Philip Sousa march. You had an A section that's repeated, a B section that's repeated, a C section that's repeated, and then you go back. So it's kind of like Stars and Stripes Forever. Remember that march? Yeah. So that same formula was developed by many of the ragtime composers. So getting back to the cakewalk form is derived from that. So this particular piece I wrote has elements of ragtime, a lot of ragtime sort of cliche phrases, I call them. It also has a little bit of the blues in there and some modern elements as well, And we call these modern elements the harmonic elements that are really modern. So it's this clash. And I guess that's why the whole quarantine element came into it, with the pandemic. It was like, oh, we're quarantined, but if I wrote a cakewalk that combined elements of the ragtime with the, elements of modern jazz, maybe, it would be a little different. So when you play this kind of music, particularly ragtime, it's really important that you have an octave span in both hands because the octaves are of utmost importance. So hopefully you have an octave reach because the early stride piano players and ragtime piano players, they could get tense. They had tense, solid tense in their left hands. Now I can do a good octave. I can fake a couple tenths, but to play really good ragtime, you need an octave. So you'll see that everything's in octaves. There are very few single notes. Everything's kind of an octave, kind of a span. And again, your left hand, what does it do? It holds it down. Left hand has to hold it down. So yeah, your left hand is what is the grounding force. So for this one, it starts out with an intro. And then it goes to modern elements. So that's almost like a bell, almost like a bell tower kind of an element, almost like the bell. And that voicing is called a quartal, Q-U-A-R-T-A-L. It's in fourths. It's very modern. It's a modern voicing. So here you have these triads. Then all of a sudden, you have this chord with a flat 13. It's a G7 flat 13. And then you go, and then all of a sudden all of a sudden you have, oh my goodness, there's a sense of, what's going on here? Which is kind of how I was feeling around March or April. Don't know about you. What's going on? But I was determined to go back to now that's probably the most cliched phrase in ragtime. That's just everybody, that's like 99% of the ragtime songs. Yeah. So I borrowed it. And then I added some other things. And then I go back to the, I don't know. I don't know how to feel. I want to dance. I want to dance the cakewalk, but I keep going back to. goodness. Oh, any questions? You guys are, you can get off mute if you like and ask a question. Do you have any, can we take some questions? Is that okay?
It'd be fine. Let's see if anybody's got stuff. I think we've got a lot of people who are not actually playing piano. And do you have any advice for people playing melody
I
instruments?
see. I see a violinist out there. It's amazing. Of course. What you can do, you can play the melodic aspects of the of jazz, but I would still suggest playing along with an app like iReal, because what this forces you to do is it forces you to envelop the sense of groove you need. You know what I mean? Because time, as we know, is important. We know it's important to keep a steady beat. But in jazz, you've got to be able to have a really strong groove. Yeah. So what this does, it has all these various grooves that you can experience, virtually, so that when you're put in a situation where you have an actual live, you know, situation with musicians and an interactive situation, you can then incorporate some of the groove that you kind of learned. But it's all about the groove. Even with vocalists, I might have some singers out there. I still strongly suggest this app because it's again, it has chords if you want to have the chord. It has a bass. It has all the elements of what you would get in a traditional, like a jazz band, but virtual.
I put the link up on the
Yeah.
workshop page. So just go back to the workshop page and you can click the link for iReal Pro.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Thank you for doing that. That's amazing.
I have a
That's
question.
Sure. Hi,
sure.
Calvin. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm a violinist, and I noticed there are no chords written on the sheet. You mentioned chordals. What chords do the chordals? When can you use the chordals? Under what chord? 5 chord or one? The quartals.
Right. The chordal harmonies. Well, a
Yeah.
chordal, it just means the chordal harmony means that instead of being based on a triad, you know how our normal, I would say normal harmonic, chords
Right.
are based on thirds. It just means it's
Yeah.
based on fourths. So,
Okay.
answer your question, you can use it on any.
Oh,
You can use chordal voicing on any chord. Dominant chords, it works really well. It works really
great.
well with minor chords. Works really. I use it as sort of a minor context here.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
I didn't put chord changes because
Yeah.
I wanted everybody to be able to play this, and even I didn't want the chord changes to intimidate people who aren't used to seeing them.
Sure.
And so many of my students are just used to seeing notation. So I said, well,
Yeah.
let me just write it with a notation, and I'll put a lead sheet to it for jazz players. I can do that easily. But writing it out so that everybody can play it is more of an inclusive way.
Okay.
I think of
Cool.
sharing music. Yeah,
Great.
yeah. But
Yeah.
it's a great question, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely. The choral changes, the chordal. Right. And then going back to the triad. So it's very striking to the ear when you're
Right.
hearing, and all of a sudden you hear, right? So that's the juxtaposition of that. Yeah. I thought that was striking. But
Thanks.
again, like I said, I don't get a chance to even play my own stuff or talk about it. So this is like new for me. Yeah. On my gigs, I basically play the American songbook and standards and things like that. I don't usually play my own compositions. So this is great.
It's great to hear them too. Do you want to play through it a little bit like you did on the Boogie Woogie and give people a chance to kind of play along?
Sure, you want to play along? What's our tempo for the day? How you feeling? I always ask my students that, how are you feeling today about tempo? Uh,
135.
let's slow it down a bit. Would you like to play with the backing track? I have a quarantine cakewalk backing track too. We can set it to like 130. Is that a good tempo? I've got a nice New Orleans beat here. It's like a New Orleans swing street beat that I thought worked really well. You know what I mean? It's kind of captured everything. All right, let me get my readers on. It's funny, I did write it, but I'm still reading it. Here we go. One more time, take two. You know what? I'm gonna put a count off on this thing so it can count me in. That's what I needed. I needed 4 beats. All right, take two. Then it goes back. Then it goes into the D section or the other section. Yeah. So you might notice I didn't play it exactly as written. Some of the things I kind of interpreted because it's jazz. I mean, you can put your own personal stamp, and every time I play it a little differently. I'm like, wow, maybe I'm feeling this way a little bit. Maybe I'm feeling, like I want to add this note, add that note.
We
You can
we
always do that.
Yeah, we had a question actually, I think that's pertinent to that. It says, for the person who only reads notation, and if you
Mhm.
even had the chords there, it wouldn't necessarily help. We see the chords you've written, they're simple, but with jazz, there's so many sevenths and ninths and 13ths. How do you learn how to add those? How do you learn those things from looking just at the notation?
Right. It depends on when the jazz composition was written, because traditionally, the ninths and the 13ths didn't start until modern jazz. They were modern jazz things. And this is supposed to be a little take on the traditional things before modern jazz even took off. And traditionally you had triads and seventh chords. That's all you had. Occasionally, anything else, but usually just dominant seventh chords and triads. And then later, after the 1950s, people started adding the ninths and the 13ths and that kind of thing. And the harmonies became a little more complex throughout in the history of jazz. So because I sort of have I'm sort of eclectic. So I have all that stuff here. I have the traditional chords, the triads. I have the ninth, the seventh chords, and I have a 13th here and there. And then I have that very complicated flat 13, the 7 flat 13, because that's kind of who I am, because I play all kinds of jazz and modern jazz. So it's hard for me to write something without putting some modern elements into it. But that's a good question. How do you know? It depends on when the piece of music was conceived. And most music, historically, speaks at a different era in jazz throughout the actual development of it. So yeah, that's great.
That's what's so cool actually about that, because the contrast between the
Yeah,
really traditional sound and the more, you know, mysterious modern
right.
harmonic basis is really cool.
That's what I was kind of going for without really actually realizing it. I was like, wow, let's put that in there. Yeah. My students at SF State, one of them, it's so interesting because everybody comes from all these different places musically. One of my students is strictly classical, she's classically trained. And trying to get her to loosen up and actually, play things with a more of a swing feel and jazzy feel was actually a really big challenge for the two of us. And then I have another student who's completely self-taught. He sat at the piano and he just figured out how to play by ear. So I'm just trying to get him to like connect with the page. So he has to come on now, connect with the page. I know you're playing, but it kind of doesn't go that way. So yeah, but we all come from different places, music, and both are really good players, very talented musically. But you know what? They both come from different places musically. I'm
Here's
just
another.
really fortunate. Yeah.
No, sorry to interrupt, Dee.
No, no,
We
no,
have
no.
another question. This is a
Uh-huh.
great question. For a traditional music reader,
Mm-hmm.
is there a good reference or something that people can learn for converting notes to chords? For instance, what's a
Absolutely.
13th?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They have so many amazing things on YouTube now. There are all these jazz lessons on YouTube and harmony lessons on YouTube, and they're good. I mean, I sit down and I listen. I'm like, well, they're explained very clearly, and they're done both notationally from the 5 lines, four space thing, but they also will translate that to a keyboard. It's great. So I would suggest, yeah, check out some YouTube. There's some great examples on YouTube. And you know what? What I can do is I'll go back and perhaps pick out a couple and put them on like a resource page or something.
Yes, that
Some
would be great. If you send them to me, Dee, I can add them. And
absolutely.
just to, can you just talk a little bit about how the chords are spelled in jazz? Because in for traditional classical musicians, the whole nomenclature of ninths, 13ths, and stuff, and flats, and like a flat nine or whatever, it's not a
Sure.
familiar terminology.
Okay. Okay. Well, I can do that. Let's say, for example, let's make it simple. How about a C major triad? Are we C, E, G? Okay. So in jazz, after like 1939, as we got into the 40s, people were like, oh, I want to make that sound richer. So of course the sevenths were used. They had been used actually during the 1920s and 30s. But then someone went 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Right? They were like, oh, I like how that sounds. So if I play that with my right hand, E, G, B flat, D, and play the the root C in my left hand, I get a really big sound there. But they weren't satisfied. No, no, no. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. How about that note? Oh. So let's just keep counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wow. Okay. Well, the 13 is the same as 6, but if I put it way up here, it's 13. Wow. That sounds even better. But what if I take that A, that's the 13, I can take it down a half step. Ooh. And now it's a flat 13. Oh my goodness. What about that 9? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. What if I take that down a half step? So that D is a D flat. Wow. Wow, that's nice. Or what if I take that D natural, that's the 9th, up a half step? Oh my goodness. Oh, kind of jarring, huh? You know what I mean? Oh.
Right.
That's familiar. Then you can superimpose chords. You can put one chord over another. Right? And you voice chords differently. Voicing is another art. You can have them, or you can learn to voice them differently. Where you're just using inverse. So you can, stack them differently, which is what you learn when you play the piano, because you can't play everything in root. You're like, my goodness. So you learn to voice things so that everything kind of fits under your hand. Yeah.
So if you're adding those extra notes that are actually stacked up high, but you're adding them into the shape internally, do you still call them ninths and 13ths, or do you call them seconds and sixths?
Isn't that interesting? Well, it depends on what kind of genre it is. Because if I'm playing this, then they're called add 9, add 2s, add 2. But if I'm playing the same chord in jazz, it's called a ninth. Because I'm including everything in between. So if I include everything in between that note in the root, it's a 9. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. But if I just say 1, 2, 3, and I'm playing a pop piece, it's an add 2. Because I'm just going 1, 2, 3.
So just like before, it has a lot to do with the historical period, or the sort of the genre of the composition.
Right. Because in some pop musicals or some pop, in pop music, you use a lot of these add 2s. Yeah, you use a lot of those add 2s. Yeah, because
Right.
yeah,
It's different feeling.
Right. Oh, it's all about the feeling. But sometimes you just want to have a big sound. You know what I mean? And it becomes, you're using everything, so it becomes a ninth. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Dee.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I was wondering, we have the time. I wonder if you would want to go back to the two compositions and have everybody play with you again, because I think that was fun, and just give people a chance to play a little bit.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. Everybody ready? Want to go back to the boogie woogie? Got your boogie woogie? It's so funny. The jazz musicians are like, why didn't you put chord symbols? And then the classical musicians are like, no, don't put no chord symbols. We don't want them. Give us the notes.
You just can't please everybody.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? No, but I tried to make it as readable. For me, music should be able to, you should be able to play it. So when I write something, I write it so that it's so incredibly playable. And so that my students can go, oh, I can actually read this and play it. You know what I mean? Not have to spend like the entire semester explaining it. No, it's a dotted 16th that goes to the 32nd. All right, here we go. How fast? How slow? What's our tempo today? Should I take a little under tempo?
Yeah, a little under, I think it's good.
Under is good. With track or without track?
With track.
Oh, you like the track. Oh, see, I put that track together just for this song. All right. Are we ready? Are we ready for Beauty Box Boogie? Take 5, 6. That's another song. No, we're not gonna play Take 5. Are we ready to do Beauty Box Boogie, folks? I actually have a count in, so I can actually like get ready to actually play the song. Here we go. Hey. Oh, you gotta swing it. Here we go. Second time. Shout, chorus, shout. Second time. Here we go, out. Yeah.
Yay.
Well, that was fun. That was fun. That was the boogie woogie. So if you really want to take it a step further, you'll add some improv. Add some improv. Don't be afraid. You can go, take one of these phrases here. You can just borrow this phrase and it'll fit. If you wanted to make a 12-bar blues improv, just borrow one of these phrases from the song and just put it over a 12-bar blues form. And there you got your solo. You got your tool.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yes. How'd you do? Was everybody jamming? Did you have fun? Good. I just hope it wasn't tedious. Oh, good. I got a thumbs up. Yay, Sharice. Yay. Any questions? Anybody else got questions? Are you having fun? You could be on a beach right now, but no, you're with me. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Dee, this is so awesome. And I'm sorry I have my video off so I don't look like a real person here. This is just so wonderful because for those of us who are, simply classically trained and very stuck on the notes, what you've done is given us a bridge. I mean, now I know how to begin to practice trying to do some of this stuff. I've never had the nerve to do it before, but I think maybe I could try. So thank you so much for this. I want to hear the next piece too.
You want to, is everybody up for one more? Or are we done? Are you up for it? Come on. You up for it?
Yes,
All right.
We can totally do that.
please.
All right. Here we go. Here we go. Quarantine cakewalk. Here we go. All right. With the track, I guess. Quarantine cakewalk. How about tempo? A little bit under? Want to do a little under?
We like a little bit under. It just gives, make sure it's
Yes,
nice slow groove.
it's easier for us.
Okay, let's do it at 125. But we're going to still have our New Orleans band.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody like that New Orleans band? Who doesn't like a New Orleans jazz band, right? Okay, here we go.
Right.
I hope I counted. I didn't count it. Here we go. Here we go. Oops, sorry. Oop. Can we take it from, how about section D? Da, 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 da. All right. 1, here we go. 2, 3, 4. Yes. So I
That was
did
great, Dee. Thanks.
Dee, would you consider putting in the lead sheet chords for those of us who don't read?
absolutely. I'll do it just for you. I'll put in the lead sheet
That's
chords
great.
over top of the actual, each measure. Yeah.
That'd be great. And I can
That's it.
easily add those to the info page so people can come back and get those additional materials.
Sure.
That'd be
Absolutely.
sick.
I can do that easily. All right. We've got jazzers in the house. I
That's
love it.
right. I think that's, if any more questions, but I think that's just been super fun, Dee.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks,
Yay,
everyone.
everybody. Thanks for joining.